Too big, just sit on it, the rancher said calmly. And in that exact second, something deep inside her warned her that this was not a suggestion, it was a lifeline. Stay right here with this story, because what she's about to realize under her will flip everything you think you know about quiet people and quiet places. And if you don't want to miss how this turns out, like the video and subscribe now, because the ending will hit hard. The rancher's voice wasn't raised, wasn't sharp, wasn't threatening. That was the strange part. It carried the steadiness of someone used to danger, someone who had learned long ago that panic only makes things worse. Marla stood on the porch of Red Hollow Ranch with dust clinging to her jeans and sweat cooling on the back of her neck, trying to convince herself that the long drive hadn't made her paranoid. The ranch looked older than she expected. Weathered wood, sagging railings, nails dark with rust, like it had been standing there long before maps were updated and names were forgotten. She had come because of a letter. One sentence, no signature. Just an address and a line that said, "If you want to know what really happened to your family's land, come alone." Every lawyer she called told her to ignore it. Every instinct told her not to. Yet here she was, staring at a man she'd never met, feeling like she'd walked into a story already halfway told. Ethan Cole leaned against the doorframe, hat low, eyes sharp but tired. He didn't look like someone hiding secrets for fun. He looked like someone carrying them, because there was no other choice. Marla shifted her weight, ready to step back down the porch steps, when he nodded toward the bench beside her. "You've been standing too long," he said. "It's been a big day." She forced a smile, pride flaring. "I'm fine." Ethan shook his head, slow and deliberate. "Too big, just sit on it." The word it landed wrong. Not there, not the bench. Marla followed his gaze. The bench looked ordinary, thick planks, rough edges, sun bleached to a pale gray. She told herself she was imagining things. Ranchers were practical. This was probably just his way of being polite. Still, unease crawled up her spine as she lowered herself onto the bench. The wood creaked loudly, protesting her weight, then went still. For a second, nothing happened. She laughed, breath shaky, the sound too loud in the quiet. "See," she said. "Perfectly." Ethan's expression didn't change. He stepped back, slow, careful, like one wrong movement might spook a wild animal. That's when Marla felt it. A faint vibration. Not enough to shake the bench, just enough that she couldn't pretend it wasn't real. It traveled up through the wood, into her legs, settling in her bones like a low hum. Her smile vanished. "Ethan," she said, keeping her voice steady with effort. "Why does this bench feel like it's breathing?" He crouched down, brushing dirt away from the ground beneath the bench, revealing a thin, almost invisible seam in the porch boards. "My father built this place," he said quietly, "back when storms were meaner and people trusted land more than locks." Marla swallowed. "What's under me?" The vibration grew stronger, metal whispering against metal. Ethan looked up at her then, and for the first time she saw fear in his eyes. Not wild fear, but the kind that comes from knowing exactly how bad things can get. "A storm cellar," he said, "and a pressure release latch that hasn't been serviced in decades." Her heart slammed against her ribs. "You're saying this bench as the trigger," he finished. "Your weight is keeping it closed." Marla's breath came shallow. Instinct screamed at her to jump up, to run, to put distance between herself and whatever nightmare sat beneath her. She shifted just an inch. The bench dipped. Somewhere below, a hollow clunk echoed. Ethan's voice sharpened. "Don't." She froze. Sweat broke out across her forehead. "Why didn't you tell me before I sat down?" she demanded, anger fighting panic. He exhaled slowly. "Because if I'd said it out loud, you would have bolted, and then it would have dropped." Silence pressed in around them, broken only by the wind sliding through the tall grass. Ethan explained in a low, steady voice how his father had designed the cellar to stay sealed unless weighted correctly, how it once saved lives during a flash flood, how time had turned a clever safeguard into a loaded trap. "The latch sticks," he said. "Needs pressure to stay put. Too little, it opens. Too much, it snaps." Marla stared straight ahead, afraid to look down, afraid to move. "So why am I here?" she whispered. Ethan hesitated, and that hesitation told her more than any answer could. "Because what's down there," he said finally, "is tied to your family. And because you're the first person in years whose weight triggered the mechanism without breaking it." A cold realization washed over her. This wasn't coincidence. The letter, the bench, the careful words, all of it had been calculated. Beneath her, the vibration steadied, like the cellar was waiting, patient. Marla closed her eyes, forcing her breathing to slow as Ethan coached her through each inhale and exhale. "Trust me," he said. "Just for now." Trust, the word tasted bitter. Yet sitting there, suspended between safety and collapse, Marla understood something terrifying and clear. Whatever was under her wasn't just wood and metal. It was truth, buried, pressurized, waiting for the right weight to bring it to light. And as the porch groaned softly beneath her, she realized her life had already shifted onto a fault line, and standing up too fast would destroy more than just a bench. If this chapter pulled you in, and you want to know what's hidden beneath Red Hollow, and what it has to do with Marla's past, make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel, because the next chapter reveals why some secrets are buried so deep for a reason. The hardest part wasn't the fear, it was the waiting. Marla had always believed fear came loud and fast like a scream or a crash, but this was different. This fear was quiet, patient, coiled tight inside her chest while time stretched thin. She sat perfectly still on the bench, every muscle locked, every breath measured, as if the wrong inhale could tilt the world. The vibration beneath her steadied into a low, constant hum, no longer growing, no longer fading, just there, like a reminder that the ground itself was listening. Ethan remained a few steps away, eyes fixed on her knees, on the exact placement of her weight, as though memorizing it could somehow keep disaster from happening. "We're going to do this slow," he said, voice controlled, deliberate. "No surprises." Marla swallowed. "You keep saying we," she replied, "but I'm the one sitting on a trapdoor." Ethan didn't flinch. "And I'm the one who'll be under it if it drops wrong." That gave her pause. She hadn't noticed before how close he stood to the seam in the porch, how his boots were positioned near the edge, as if ready to wedge himself in place. The realization shifted something inside her, not comfort exactly, but balance. "Tell me," she said quietly. "Tell me why my family's name is tied to whatever you've buried under me." The wind picked up, carrying the dry scent of earth and old wood. Ethan looked out over the fields for a long moment, as if deciding where to begin meant deciding how much damage he was willing to do. "Your grandfather came here before my father owned this land," he said at last. "Back when Red Hollow wasn't a ranch. It was a settlement. Temporary, they thought. People passing through during the drought years." Marla frowned. "My grandfather was a teacher," she said. "He didn't settle land." Ethan nodded. "That's what the records say." The words landed heavy. He explained how, during the worst summer on record, water rights were quietly redrawn, favors traded, names erased. How a storage cellar was built beneath what would later become the porch, not just for storms, but for safekeeping. Safekeeping of what? Marla asked, jaw tight. Ethan met her eyes. Documents, ledgers, proof. Her heart thudded. The vibration under the bench shifted, a subtle click echoing upward, and she froze. "Don't move," Ethan said instantly, raising a hand. That was the latch settling. Sweat traced a line down Marla's spine. "You built a truth vault under a pressure trigger." "My father did," Ethan corrected, "after he found out what it contained." He went on, voice low and steady, describing the night his father discovered the cellar by accident while repairing flood damage. How he'd opened it just enough to see names he recognized, and names he didn't, tied together by ink and intent. He resealed it and changed the mechanism, Ethan said. Said some truths need the right weight before they're safe to open. Marla let out a humorless breath. "So you sent me a letter," she said. "You lured me here to be the weight." Ethan didn't deny it. "I needed someone who belonged to those pages," he said. "Someone the truth would answer to." Anger flared, hot and sharp. "You risked my life," she snapped. "You decided that for me." Ethan's jaw tightened. "I decided the truth was worth the risk," he said. "And so did you." when you came." The words stung because they were true. Marla closed her eyes, fighting the urge to scream, to cry, to laugh at the absurdity of it all. Beneath her, the cellar hummed like a held breath. "What happens now?" she asked. Ethan moved slowly to the porch steps, retrieving a coiled rope and a set of old tools. He explained the plan in careful steps, how he would reinforce the latch manually, how she would shift her weight in increments no larger than a breath, how timing mattered more than strength. "If we rush," he said, "it drops." The sun climbed higher, heat pressing down, sweat dampening Marla's collar. Minutes stretched into an hour. With each tiny adjustment, the bench groaned, the seam whispering its warnings. Ethan narrated everything, counting breaths, calling pauses, his voice becoming the only solid thing in a world balanced on a hinge. As they worked, Marla's mind wandered despite herself, memories surfacing unbidden. Her mother's reluctance to talk about Red Hollow, the way family gatherings went quiet when her grandfather's name came up, the feeling that something essential had been edited out of her life. Another click sounded beneath her, louder this time. Ethan froze, then smiled faintly. "That's it," he said. "The secondary lock is engaged." Relief flooded her so fast it made her dizzy. "Can I stand?" she whispered. "Not yet," he replied. "We're not done." He secured the rope, tested the tension, then nodded. "On 3, he said. "Slow," she counted with him. "On 3. She rose just enough for the bench to lighten, then sat again when he told her to. The mechanism held again, and again. Finally, Ethan gave a short laugh that sounded more like disbelief than joy. "It's stable," he said. Marla slid off the bench, legs shaking, and sank onto the porch boards. She expected the cellar to open, expected chaos. Instead, the vibration faded into silence. Ethan knelt and pried open a hidden panel, revealing a ladder descending into darkness. Cool air rose up, smelling of damp paper and old earth. Marla stared down into it, heart racing. "That's what I was sitting on," she said softly. Ethan nodded. "That's what you were holding shut." They descended together, lantern light cutting through dust motes. The cellar was larger than she expected, shelves lining the walls, crates stacked with care. Ethan opened one, revealing bundles of documents tied with twine, ink faded but legible. Marla's breath caught as she recognized her family name, over and over, linked to transactions, to decisions that reshaped land and lives. "My grandfather didn't lose the land," she whispered. "He gave it up, under pressure," Ethan said gently, and then he disappeared from the record. Marla's hands shook as she lifted a ledger, the weight of it familiar and awful. "You buried this?" she said. Ethan met her gaze. "I protected it," he replied, "until someone came who could carry it." Silence settled between them, heavy but clear. Marla understood then that sitting on the bench hadn't been the danger. Standing up, walking away from this truth, would have been. And as she looked at the cellar's contents, she knew this chapter of her life was only beginning. By the time they climbed back onto the porch, the sun had tilted west, casting long shadows across the boards where Marla had sat for hours. The ranch looked the same, wide sky, quiet fields, but something essential had shifted, like a lens snapping into focus. Ethan closed the hidden panel and brushed dust from his hands. "Once this leaves the ground," he said, nodding toward the cellar beneath them, "it stops being mine to protect." Marla didn't answer right away. She held one of the ledgers against her chest, feeling its weight press into her ribs, grounding her. The names inside weren't just ink anymore. They were voices she could finally hear. "Protection isn't the same as silence," she said at last. Ethan studied her face, as if searching for a crack. Finding none, he exhaled. "Then we do this clean," he said. "No leaks. No half-truths." They drove into town together, the ledger wrapped in canvas on Marla's lap. Red Hollow appeared gradually, buildings rising from the road like memories returning. Slow, cautious. At the county office, the clerk's smile faltered when Marla said her name. The recognition passed like a shadow. Papers were requested. Copies were made. The ledger's pages whispered as they turned. Each stamp sounded louder than the last. Outside, a small crowd gathered, curiosity first, then something sharper. A woman stepped forward, eyes bright with anger and relief. "My grandmother's name," she said, voice shaking. It's in there, isn't it? Marla met her gaze and nodded. The truth moved faster after that, spreading through town like rain on dry ground. By evening, the local paper ran a headline that refused to be quiet. People argued, cried, hugged. Some thanked Marla, others blamed her. She accepted it all, understanding that truth doesn't choose favorites. It chooses daylight. That night, she returned to the ranch alone. The porch creaked as she sat on the same bench, now just a bench. No hum, no warning. She thought of her grandfather, of the choices he made under pressure, of the years that followed in edited silence. "I'm standing now," she whispered to the empty fields. In the distance, a truck approached. Ethan parked and joined her, offering a bottle of water. They sat side by side, not touching. "Tomorrow," he said, "they'll ask what happens next." Marla looked out at the land, at the sky opening wide. "Tomorrow," she replied, "we answer." By dawn, Red Hollow was awake and restless. Truth had roots now. Marla stood steady, knowing the land had finally spoken, and this time no one could bury it again.